Everyone is talking about this big, beautiful bill that just passed the House. President Trump's words, it's a big, beautiful bill. Is it big? Is it beautiful? Well, it's big, but it's not necessarily beautiful. It's kind of big and disastrous, big and gross, big and nasty. It's massive cuts to entitlement programs, hundreds of billions of dollars, just gratuitous nonsense. Oh, and speaking of gratuitous nonsense, it's going to cut taxes for people who are already extremely well off, making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Yeah, no, let's give them more money. Yeah, they deserve more. People who make less deserve less. Bootstrap mentality, total nonsense. Words that have been used to describe this bill include financially irresponsible, garbage, class warfare, fiscally irresponsible. And here's an example of someone calling it fiscally irresponsible. We got Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks writing, Trump's tax cut bill gives $1.1 trillion to people who make over $500,000. Because the poor guys just couldn't catch a break, why are we putting another $1 trillion on the debt to give the richest people in the country another tax cut? How is that fiscally responsible? That is a great rhetorical question, Cenk. How is that fiscally responsible? But we also have to talk about something else that is irresponsible, and that's what Cenk Uygur followed this up with. He says, by the way, Steve Bannon agrees with me that we can't afford more tax cuts for the rich when the debt is exploding. And he has an article that says, I'm very upset. Steve Bannon says Trump's big, beautiful bill needs fixing in the Senate. Why would you follow this up with talking about what Steve Bannon says? What? Shouldn't you be condemning Steve Bannon for not fighting against it? Tell him, call up Trump and tell him to tell Congress to change the bill. Not, oh, Steve Bannon's right about this, by the way. Who cares? So you have a bunch of people excoriating Uygur in the comments saying, dude, come on. You don't want to be like, oh, a white nationalist agrees with me. If he's right about it, he's right about it. Credit where it's due. But he's not doing anything. He's not doing anything to make this bill any better. Why on earth? Why on earth do we need to push this so-called populist left and so-called MAGA populist alliance? It's just something that's not feasible. It's not feasible. The actions of the administration, the regime over the past few months expose this so thoroughly. It's a myth. It's a myth that left populists and right populists can work together. These people feign concern for the working class. They feign concern about the debt. Steve Bannon did not do anything. He did not do anything to make this bill less likely to pass in its current form. He's part of the Republican Party, but yet he's not actually reforming the Republican Party. He's not doing anything to make it better. Steve Bannon is a guy who actually implied Elon Musk was racist against white people for taking in H-1B visa immigrants. He was saying, oh, he's racist and evil for this. Really? This is the guy you want to cozy up to? He's making Elon Musk seem like a normal person in comparison to him by calling him racist against white people. Dude, no. You do not want this type of alliance. You do not want to do this. This is sheer Gavin Newsom tier stuff. Gavin Newsom, for some stuff he's done, has been good. We'll give him credit for that. But he brought on Steve Bannon onto his podcast. Really ridiculous move. Not helpful at all. And what Cenk Uygur is doing here is not helpful at all. It's irresponsible in and of itself. So he's correctly calling out fiscal irresponsibility in the form of this big, beautiful disaster of a bill, but yet he himself is being rhetorically irresponsible. This should have died back in like 2019, 2020, probably earlier. This really far right guy agrees with me on something. Yeah, there are factions within the far right. There are some people on the far right who are more correct about certain issues than others. Taxes can be one of those issues. Same-sex marriage can be one of those issues. Abortion can be one of those issues. There are pro-choice far right wingers. There are pro-same-sex marriage far right wingers. There are pro-environment far right wingers. People who support very aggressive environmental regulation. They're sometimes referred to as eco-fascists, by the way. Going out here and saying, this guy who hates immigrants, who wants to make America more white, this guy is actually cool. He's right on taxes. I mean, he didn't say he was cool, to be fair, but saying, oh yeah, he agrees that this is fiscally irresponsible. That is not going to change the minds of anyone on the right. That's not going to change the minds of any MAGA blowhard who's like, yeah, Trump is fighting for the working class. They're still going to read this bill. They're not going to read this bill. Scratch that. But they're still going to know that this bill was passed and be like, yeah, Trump, he's fighting for the working class, man. The forgotten men and women will never be forgotten, as he said in his 2017 inauguration address. Yeah, this guy, he's a real populist. He fights for the working class, and the Democrats are the opposite. Yeah, he's standing up for people. They won't address the specifics of this bill. They will lie. They'll say, no, none of this stuff is happening. You're a liar. He's not cutting taxes for the rich. He's not cutting Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security and food stamps. No, none of this stuff. they gaslight and they lie when it comes to economics. They're not going to be serious. They're not going to actually entertain this line of argumentation sincerely. They're not going to see, oh, shoot, what's this article say? Oh, Steve Bannon is criticizing this bill. He says it needs to be reformed in the Senate because it's too friendly to the uber wealthy and it's financially irresponsible with respect to our debt. They're not going to do that. Very few of them are going to do that. I know we've got 330 million people in this country, so maybe some will, but not enough. This is not the winning rhetorical tactic. It is not. It is rhetorically irresponsible. And you know what you're doing by posting this? You're kind of throwing people who Steve Bannon would like to harm under the bus. You kind of are. You're like saying, yeah, no, this guy's right on economics, and I care more about economics than the people who Steve Bannon wants to harm. So yeah, I'm gonna be like, yeah, Steve Bannon's got a point on this. No, do not do that. That is totally, totally irresponsible. This weird arc that Cenk Uygur has taken recently of being really, sympathetic to MAGA, criticizing them at times, but being like, oh yeah, they can line up with us because they don't like the establishment, and that's really cool. That is not feasible. That is not feasible. Disliking the establishment is too vague a thing to build an alliance on. We cannot build an alliance on vagaries. We can't build an alliance on dislike for the government, dislike for the establishment, dislike for any platitude, any cliche. No. We have to talk about alliances based on actual policies. Read the text of the legislation that these people are putting forward. Read the provisions and say, do I want to ally myself with that? Read what they say about other issues too. Do I want to ally myself with someone who suggests that letting in immigrants on H-1B visas is racist against white people? Steve Bannon's going out and making these unhinged criticisms against Elon Musk like that. Elon Musk is bad enough as it is. You don't need to make yourself look even worse than him by criticizing him. That is insane. That is positively insane. The guy's a criminal too. The guy's a criminal. Don't cozy up to the guy. Trump had to pardon him. It's ridiculous. So yeah, this big, beautiful bill is a big disaster of a bill. I applaud anyone coming forward and talking about the specifics, including Republicans. If they genuinely dislike it, they're being sincere. Right-wing commentators alike, if they're pointing out the specifics in it and saying, yeah, I don't like this, I give them credit. But we do not go out and sing the praises of people who are so far removed from reality, so far off of the spectrum to the right. We do not give them credit. We do not say, oh, look, isn't this convincing? Right-wingers, shouldn't you agree with this? No, that's not the way that we do politics here. We do it by making the argument based on the merits, not who thinks things. Steve Bannon could have a whole bunch of other positions on issues that we agree with, but he's still spouted some of the most horrific takes imaginable. So no, we are not going to tout that. Do not follow up your posts about how bad this bill is with, oh, Steve Bannon says it's bad. Look at this. That is irresponsible. He and Anna Kasparian make some good points on some issues, but I don't really appreciate this arc of really going and pandering super hard to the hard right and being like, hey, look, you guys might agree with us. It's going in a weird direction. It's kind of CNN-like, actually, where you do like both sides. Cenk will be like, oh, the left thinks this, the far left thinks this, and the far right thinks this, and they're both really bad, and I'm really cool. And the fact that the far left and the far right hate me shows that I'm great. Not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily work like that. Sometimes the far left and the far right can be correct about things, that they can agree on things. Sometimes they can be totally wrong about things. Sometimes if the far left and the far right hate you, you might still suck. Just a point. Yeah, you don't base how cool you are on who hates you. If you're pissing someone off, that doesn't inherently mean you're a cool guy because the person you're pissing off is an idiot. No. So yeah, the far right and the far left can both be cringy, but just feeling glorified and feeling cool by them dunking on you is not really the way to go. And so is criticizing the establishment all the time, vaguely gesturing at the establishment. That's not inherently cool. Saying, oh, the establishment, look how much I'm pissing off the establishment. Isn't that so cool? MAGA pisses off the establishment too. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that unique and intriguing? Shouldn't we ally ourselves with them? We want to align ourselves with MAGA, yeah. If they want to fight the establishment, if they're sincere about that, no, we don't. No, we don't. The establishment is far too vague a term to unify against as an enemy. Sorry, it just is. Let me know what you think in the comments below about Cenk Uygur's statements. Like, comment, or subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you in my next video.